Well, hello, therapists and practice owners. We are talking about things that turn into a black void of sadness, death, and destruction for your therapy practice today. We're talking about some emotional, monetary, and otherwise black holes that you can find your practice getting sucked into as you grow. Another way to put this is when you have blind spots, big blind spots in your business, and we all have them, sometimes it can destroy the momentum and be the very source of uh, um, sort of the pain in your side for why you can't grow, your restriction, so to speak. So we're going to be talking about that concept as a whole, and then we're going to be talking about three huge ones that we often have to like clarify or reveal for a practice owner as they're growing, as their major restriction in order for them to continue their scaling journey. So especially if you're a group practice and you're wanting to add 5 or 10 clinicians in the next year or two, this is going to be a really potent training for you to listen to and make sure that these core segments are fixed in your practice before before you go too far, and some notes even for our cash pay practice owners as well, solo or group. So that being said, Attilio, what is your perspective on sort of hidden traps or hidden black holes that can happen as you grow your business?
Yeah, I'll say this. Um, you guys are kind of lucky. I think mental health businesses are actually very simple businesses. And so if you're engineering a practice the way that most of our clients try to engineer their practice, where they're trying to get free time, they're trying to get profits, they're trying to get, they get to decide what clinical load they want. And they get to decide maybe some of these other factors about brand and some other things, and they just kind of get to. And so, like, if you're trying to engineer a business for that, there's really only a few like big pitfalls, but the pitfalls can be pretty significant, and we see this kind of often. We see this kind of often in practices that don't know why they can't grow and they feel like they're doing all the right things. There's oftentimes some of these like hidden elements in there. I might have a bonus one that you didn't add on your newsletter that I'm just thinking of right now, and I was just talking about it
Bonus
yesterday.
content, guys.
Yeah, I'll drop the
Bonus content.
bonus. I'll drop the bonus at the end here if you stick
Okay.
around.
Well, let's,
So first one is the
yeah.
churn or client replacement rate. Did you want to go ahead and dig in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that for client churn and really client replacement rate, earlier this week, I was doing some math on the numbers. I was actually trying to calculate the volume of marketing ad spend needed to fill 10 caseloads, 10 counselors caseload if you're starting from scratch. And it was kind of an interesting like thought problem depending on your marketing sources and pieces. But what I really pushed into that truly affects the number is how quickly do your current therapists churn clients or do clients graduate out? So for good or bad reasons, how many average sessions does a single client do in your practice? And we hear often that it's anywhere from like 3 to 6, 3 to 9 months. That really looks like 12 to maybe upwards of like 45 total sessions that a client might do in your practice. But here's the crazy thing. Without going into the whole math and the formula and everything that I used, because there were some semantics in this, if on average, each therapist on your team only sees a client 12 times, if you want them to have 20 sessions a week, you need to place 10 new clients with them every single month to keep them at a full caseload in perpetuity. And it's kind of this poison pill where if you don't understand or you have a low average session volume per client that your clinicians are seeing, you will spend so much time and so much energy just trying to keep your current clinician's caseload full. Think about how many new clients you signed up last month. 10, 20, 60, and then think about how many clinicians you have on your team or you want to have on your team. Let's say you have 10 clinicians, you would be needing to place 100 new clients monthly just into your current team of 10 in order to keep everyone full, much less enough to fill new caseloads and keep the new caseloads full. And so this can become a really dramatic problem quickly the larger we get if we don't know what our average session volume is per clinician on our team, 1-to-1 for each clinician, and we don't scale marketing proportional to the churn that we have. And often it's why a therapy practice can't grow, because they've never done this number and seen how big of a problem this situation is for themselves.
Yeah. I think I'll expand a little on churn here because sometimes it can feel really, really sticky to calculate this or to even have like real numbers for your clinicians. Because obviously, it's not like we have contracts here. It's not like our clients have to come in for 12 sessions or they have to come in for 25 sessions. And sometimes the stick rate can be really, really subjective. So like, hey, Johnny came to see therapist number two. Johnny just didn't like the way therapist number two talked. In their second session, they got fed up and they left. And so like things like that is really hard to account for. And so sometimes using like an average number of people who stick or don't stick isn't going to get you the right number. Just like not necessarily knowing who is churned or who is just graduated or who has decided to leave, or maybe they're just taking a month hiatus. There's a lot of weird uh, angles to kind of take for churn. And so something that I've been trying to dig into a little bit further is a real leading indicator for churn tends to be the in session rebooking rate for the therapist. So if a therapist is able to rebook the client at the end of their session, that's a high indicator that the person will stick, and that's a high indicator that there's intent for a return. And so rather than calculating churn, you might be able to calculate retention, and you kind of calculate it on the back of did they rebook at the end of their session.
Yeah.
And of course, I think that there's always going to be people that reactivate. That's what we want. There's always going to be people that maybe show up after they haven't worked with you for a year and they're like, hey, things have been going well, but I just wanted to check in, have a little thing, blah, blah, blah. In that case, maybe you're under-reporting a little bit your lifetime value. And I think all of us are going to be happy with an under-reporting rather than an over-reporting here. So things to kind of consider. I know churn is sticky. Try to get a general number. You can even start with a gut instinct, and then maybe after 12 months of like data, then you can maybe start assigning numbers every 6 months to your therapist and just see which ones are good, which ones aren't so good on the retention side of things, and which one of them are actually rebooking people in session, because that's a really good, easy metrics to calculate that leads to some of these other numbers.
Yeah. And I'd say with that, there's probably a lot of practices where my numbers are a lot higher than what you're currently experiencing. That's okay. For some of your practices, maybe my numbers are low. It just depends. And so these are fake numbers, but example numbers that could be happening. But the reality is your therapists churn clients for good or for bad reasons. And often when I talk to a practice owner about their growth goals and they ask themselves, how much marketing do I need to invest in or spend in order to hire and fill out new caseloads? They are never doing the math on the amount of clients that will churn between now and when they need to fill that caseload. So just to really boil that down, you will lose 5, 10, 20 clients, whatever it is, in the next month to 3 months. We have to replace those. We have to re-add those just to stay break even with what we're currently doing before we can even grow. So if our marketing goals and our marketing budgets and effort don't account for the clients leaving through the back door as we're trying to push clients through new clients through the front door, then we'll always go slower, or math will never quite add up to the tune of 20 to probably 50% margin of error. And that's where often by just like drawing a circle around this little issue and saying, hey, You probably need to increase marketing effort, budget, and process by 20 to 50% more than you think you do because of your client churn. That alone can produce the growth and the scale that you're looking for because we've solved a huge black hole that was silently killing your business just because you were unaware of the reality of it.
Um, I think we can move to number two, which is like
Yeah.
fixed time or resource costs, especially for things like part-time clinicians. Now, if you are, I think this is maybe if you're a larger practice, I think this is very apparent. I think you've probably already grown through this pain, probably, or maybe you see a little bit of it, and maybe we're just putting a name to a face here. But if you're a smaller practice, I think this is something that you um, fall into. It's a pitfall, like really truly a pitfall. What's the harm in bringing on part-time clinicians? Well, let's talk about that. So part-time clinicians will take up the same resources as a full-time clinician, right? You still have to add them. We dropped Josh, but he'll be back here in just a second. You still have to add them into your EHR. That's a fixed cost. You have to add them in maybe into office space. You have to buy couches and sofas and whatever else for them. You have to include them in your operation, which means there's operational expenses from having a larger group of people. Your admin has to know one extra person. You now have to maybe market for one extra person. This person, they're part time. And so typically they're taking less hours and maybe they're just taking a few clients here and there, even if they're just fee split and they're not like a W-2 plus commission or other type of pay system. Even if they're fee split, this person essentially you're adding time and energy, your own mental space as the owner to work this person into your system, and then their profit is like 50% that of a full-time person. So the actual profit, the actual margins that you would get on this person, the revenue, the top line here is 50% what you could from someone who would just take a full caseload. So the part-time situation, it can be a real big drag. Maybe having one clinician that's part-time doesn't drag your whole organization down. But if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 part-time clinicians and just 1 or 2 full-time clinicians, you're going to end up with a top line that's 50% where it should be. And the top line revenue here is where you're going to be getting momentum, right? Filling fragmented staff is not going to be helpful for your organization, especially since they probably churn at the same rate, especially since they have all the same fixed costs. It takes all the same mental space for you, emotional space for you to manage and work these people in. Part-timers can be really, really tough. And especially if you have a team of like 10 people and 6 of them are part-timers, you really don't have a large staff at all. And you're working a lot harder than you need to, especially if these part-timers are maybe all taking different niched clients and they're needing special assistance on certain fragments. And so this is where it can get really, really tricky. Josh, welcome back. I just worked through number 2. So I'll go ahead. We could probably move on to number 3. Otherwise, we might be repeating some things, but
Yeah.
I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Number 3 would be the cash pay dominoes. So dominoes that fall by becoming a cash pay practice, and there are other cost dominoes that can happen as well. Essentially, when you become a cash pay therapist, you are able to charge more. Typically, you should be at least. And you're able to reduce typically like admin, billing, credentialing costs. The administrative load on running a cash pay practice is smaller and is simpler. But we consistently see that as soon as you become a cash pay practice, your market changes, meaning what you have to do to sell your therapy product shifts ever so slightly and or a lot, depending on where you're at and where your demographics are. This means that you incur anywhere probably from like a 2 to upwards of 5 times marketing cost or marketing effort. So the day you decide to become a cash practice, the difficulty to successfully market and fill your caseloads really increases. The cost per lead for Google ads, how pretty or how professional your website has to look to stand out from the crowd to justify people pursuing you, the video content you have to produce. There's this huge domino effect of, hey, if you want to charge a higher rate and people aren't going to be able to use their insurance, there's a downstream effect on quality of service and quality of marketing. All of that works together, which means you incur more cost and time to generate your clients than you did before, even if you're saving some other things. And if you either don't raise your rates to reflect all of the new costs that you're about to incur, or you don't do the work and invest in marketing, you'll find yourself making probably less than you did before as an insurance practice, or never having a successful cash pay practice to begin with, because of the dominoes that fall when you try and become cash pay that don't exist there. And every opportunity you pursue, each door that you open kind of comes with its own baggage, so to speak. That when you open that door, there's a whole bunch of things that you have to take with you, whether you like it or not. And I think often I take the train to work every day. I don't love taking the train to work. It takes me 20, 30 minutes. I have to wait and kind of stuck with whatever's going on. If I drove, or when I do drive, I save about 10 to 15 minutes. Spends $5 to get on the train every day. But if I'm like, hey, I'd love to save that $5 and that 10 minutes every day consistently, what would actually happen is I'd get a car payment. I'd get a new insurance payment. I would have to pay for city stickers. My parking fees would go up, and I'd end up spending probably anywhere from $400 to $600 a month just to have the car and drive to work instead of take the train. And it's not math that makes sense. And there are so many places where we see business owners, practice owners, make decisions about their practice because it looks really good on the surface. Oh, I'll just become cash pay. I'll be able to charge more and make more. But there's a massive domino effect that if you're not aware of, it will be a very bad decision because of the amount of baggage you have to sustain or carry with you.
Yeah, I think the cash pay black hole is actually very wide, especially if you want to build a business and not just optimize your hourly rate. If you want to optimize for a per hour work and output a per hour dollar sign, then maybe making a cash pay practice is right for you. Maybe a small group of cash pay is probably right for you. Now, if you want to build a business that you can scale your income up on and you can scale your time out of, the cash pay practice has some pretty severe limits, especially since the cash pay market size is not increasing, maybe like the insurance market sizes. And your clinicians that maybe want to make more per hour, there's kind of this bell curve that exists for how many people will pay the rate that you want. And so you kind of need to hit like a sweet spot. And the sweet spot with that cash range, there's not really like a market that you can just plug into and access these people. Even high income individuals, I hear this all the time from our cash pay practices that they just want to market towards high income people. And it's like, that's great. I love the idea, but high income people also have really, really great insurance. And so I think when you're looking at this equation, the cash pay practice is trying to hit just this perfect little sweet spot. And it's possible. Like, don't get me wrong. It is very possible. We see it all the time. It just costs like actually 2 to 5 times more to hit that sweet spot. And not just marketing expenses, it's also administrative costs because your admin team has to take more calls. It's also in the form of maybe emotional weight. Like, why can't I work with more people? You're always asking yourself, why can't I hit the target more? And I think the one time that the cash pay practice just works resoundingly well is if you just have really great connections. You have a great network and you have referral sources that have already been created or been created for a long time. Maybe you have like a school or uh, lawyers or something that are passing you referrals, and it has to be cash pay. That's how we've seen cash pay practices just work resoundingly well with great referral sources. But if you don't have great referral sources, or you're not just trying to optimize 1 hour work in equals bigger dollar sign out. If that's not the case for you, I really recommend looking at running your practice as an insurance practice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great information there and a lot of things to consider. I think the reality is, whether it's about being cash pay or other pieces, your decisions have consequences for good or for bad and costs. And the business you want to build, the practice you want to grow and scale is the one that you personally are able to do. And so I think that's where I would end this conversation is some people are incredibly equipped and even desire to spend tons of time creating social media content. Awesome way to scale and market your practice. Others are really want to get into the nuts and bolts about improving and clarifying the quality of the therapists on their team and really investing in them and having incredible outsized therapeutic results. And that doesn't happen everywhere. And that's great. And so there's these things that you as a practice owner are uniquely equipped to care about, to do, and to heavily optimize. And there's other decisions that you could go down that could be great on the surface, but you personally aren't equipped to like solve or resolve or fix. And so you just have to be aware, hey, what comes with this decision? And am I willing to pay the cost or resolve the issues to get the benefit when I go this route? So you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Unfortunately, that's always the case. One of the best ways to learn and practice building is to grow, and just continue to be aware.
I'll give my bonus real quick. I almost forgot.
Please.
Guys, the bonus black hole. I think this has to do with culture and people. If you have a bad team, if you have a few bad apples that are consistently drawing energy from the team or from you as the leader, or they're providing feedback or input that would negatively affect your practice. I think we've seen practices become starved from poor culture environments, especially environments where the therapists maybe think that the leadership is making disproportionate amount of money, or they are not making enough money. As soon as the conversation starts becoming heavily around money from certain clinicians, I might beware. Uh, Although we want to pay our clinicians fairly, and although we want to uh, provide great living for our clinicians, provide a steady income for our clinicians, the minute that they start digging in and pushing in too far beyond the bounds is the minute that it starts becoming a bad deal for your organization. And we've seen this where clinicians come in and they want really high fee split contracts, like 65%, or maybe you as the owner gave them really high percentage contracts. Um, while that might be smart to start a small team, it's certainly not something that you can build a good team on. We're seeing average practices that are performing well and scaling and growing effectively, where their reimbursements are like at the 54% range. And so if you're paying 65%, 10% of your profit margins go out of the window. And that can mean a lot of money per clinician per year. And so keep that in mind. If you're wondering why you're struggling so hard, it might be around your contracts. It might be around what you've promised your clinicians. It might be around the culture around money in your practice. Because if you've created a system that's maybe not conducive to their growth, even insurance practices, guys, you guys, the more you bill through an insurance, you can actually request higher rates. And so as you increase rates with an insurance company, you can pass some of those rate increases along to your clinicians. And so there's ways for people to grow within a range, but I think we need to have a good discussion and we need to have good expectations that are set from the start in order to keep your practice in a healthy zone. Otherwise, you're always going to be grasping for air anytime you can, and it's not going to come for you. You're going to be
Yeah,
working on one clinician's profit and the other one's taking it all from you. So
100%. We will catch you guys next time. Cheers.